The house smelled like nostalgia. Grilled food, roses from Mom's garden, and that same faint citrus cleaner she's used since I was 10. I stood near the patio with a glass of wine, watching my parents glow with excitement. Olivia was finally home. After years abroad, countless postcards, and sporadic calls from random time zones, there she was. Tanned, loud, radiant, like always. And yet, something about her felt off. She spotted me across the room and smiled, wide and rehearsed. The kind of smile you practice in the mirror. She rushed over, arms open, perfume hitting me like a wave. Spicy, overwhelming, foreign. "Look at you," she said, clutching me tight. "Still beautiful. Michael's a lucky man." Then she turned to him with a playful wink that lingered far too long. I laughed it off. Maybe she was just nervous, or rusty at being home. But as the afternoon slipped into evening, little things started piling up. Her laugh, too loud. The way she clung to every word Michael said, even the boring ones. Compliments that felt like performances. "Michael, you look like you've been working out," she purred, running her fingers along his arm like she was checking for muscle tone. He shifted uncomfortably. I forced a smile. Surely this was just her being Olivia. Right? Would you like me to continue with block 2, or would you like to make any changes first? Você diz, continue. Oh, ChatGPT diz, perfect. Here's block 2 of 3 for Chapter 1, long-awaited return. Chapter 1, long-awaited return. Block 2. Dinner was served out on the deck, white lights strung above us, clinking glasses, warm laughter. Olivia took the seat right next to Michael, sliding in before I could say a word. She leaned into him when she talked, laughed at his dad jokes like they were stand-up comedy gold. "You've got such a sharp mind," she told him, tapping her finger against his temple. My fork paused midair. My mother smiled, oblivious. My dad toasted to family and new beginnings. I tried to focus on the food, the moment, the good intentions behind the night. But I couldn't help watching Olivia. She looked different, not just older, but calculated. Her eyes kept drifting to Michael, scanning him like a page she was eager to memorize. And Michael? He laughed along, but there was tension in his shoulders, the kind he gets when he's uncomfortable and pretending not to be. Still, he didn't move his chair. He didn't pull away. For a split second, I wondered if I was imagining it all, if I was just being possessive or paranoid. Olivia had always been magnetic. People gravitated to her without trying. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe she just didn't know how to land gently after being gone so long. But then she whispered something to him that made his face freeze and mine flush. I couldn't hear it, but I felt the shift in the air. Like a storm was forming under the surface, waiting for the right gust to tear everything open. "Would you like me to continue with block 3, or would you like any adjustments to this section? Você diz, continue." Oh, ChatGPT diz, great. Here's block 3 of 3 for Chapter 1, long-awaited return. Chapter 1, long-awaited return. Block 3. After dinner, the guests drifted inside for coffee and cake, but I stayed back for a moment, watching Olivia toss her head back in laughter. Louder than necessary, eyes always checking to see who was watching. She had a way of holding court, even in my parents' backyard. Michael came up beside me, holding 2 mugs. "You okay?" he asked, handing me one. I nodded, but my stomach told another story. Inside, Olivia was already on her second glass of champagne, telling a story about a villa in Tuscany, locking eyes with Michael as she described the hot springs. I caught her biting her lip mid-sentence. It was subtle, calculated. And when she laughed at something he said, a laugh that ended in a sigh, it wasn't playful. It was intimate. Michael shifted, obviously unsure how to react, and still, he didn't walk away. I stood there, heart thudding quietly in my chest, pretending to sip my drink while watching the woman I'd grown up with, my sister, slide into something I didn't recognize. Not just flirty, not just bold. It felt intentional, like she was testing me, or daring me. And I didn't know what was worse, the fact that she was doing it, or the fact that I wasn't sure if Michael would stop it. Would you like to adjust anything, or should we move on to Chapter 2, Crossing the Line? Você diz, continue. O ChatGPT diz, perfect. Let's continue with Chapter 2, Crossing the Line. Here is Block 1 of 3, 3 paragraphs, 6 lines each. Chapter 2, Crossing the Line. Block 1. The next day, my parents hosted a small family dinner, just the 6 of us around the table, soft music in the background, candles flickering between plates. I wore my favorite sweater, the one Michael always said brought out my eyes. I needed something that made me feel steady. Olivia arrived late, breezing in like she hadn't kept everyone waiting, cheeks flushed and eyes gleaming. Sorry, I got caught up on a call, she said, tossing her purse down and brushing a hand through her hair. She took the seat next to Michael again. Of course she did, and smiled like she owned the room. Halfway through the meal, she leaned in toward him and whispered something. I couldn't hear it all, but I caught the end. Pleasure won't be lacking. My fork clinked against the plate. Michael froze for half a second, then gave a weak laugh, trying to brush it off like it was just another one of Olivia's jokes. But I saw it. His face. He didn't find it funny. He looked trapped. I looked around. My parents were deep in conversation about some renovation project. Clueless. Completely unaware that their dinner table was turning into a stage for something deeply wrong. I forced myself to breathe, to chew, to smile. But my eyes were locked on Olivia, her hand resting just a little too close to Michael's glass, her fingers brushing his wrist as she passed the salad bowl. She was playing a game, and I was done pretending I didn't see the rules. Would you like to continue with Block 2, or make any changes first? Você diz, continue. O ChatGPT diz, absolutely. Here's Block 2 of 3 for Chapter 2, Crossing the Line. Chapter 2, Crossing the Line. Block 2. Dessert came out, apple pie, just like Mom always makes it. The smell rich and buttery, but I couldn't taste a thing. I watched Olivia tilt her head and laugh when Michael made a passing comment about Paris. Oh, I could teach you a thing or two about the pleasures of Europe, she said, eyes locked on his. My stomach turned. My mother chuckled, completely missing the undertone. Michael gave a tight smile, sipping his wine like it might shield him from the awkwardness. Then it happened. Olivia slid her hand under the table. I saw it. Her fingers, creeping onto Michael's knee like they had every right to be there. My heart kicked hard against my ribs. I waited for Michael to flinch, to recoil, to say something, anything. But he just froze. Rigid. Silent. He didn't push her away, but he didn't welcome her either. And that silence? It screamed. My vision blurred. The room went quiet in my head, even though everyone else kept eating, laughing, breathing like nothing was wrong. That was the moment I stopped pretending. My hands started to tremble, first just a little, then enough to make my fork rattle against the plate. My breath came short, uneven. Michael finally glanced at me, eyes wide, as if realizing I'd seen everything. Olivia didn't even blink. She just smiled, smug and slow, like she'd won something. I set my fork down, folded my napkin with trembling fingers, and stood up. Not slowly, not calmly, just enough to break the air in the room. Would you like me to continue with Block 3, or is there anything you'd like to change first? Você diz, continue. O ChatGPT diz, here is Block 3 of 3 for Chapter 2, Crossing the Line. Chapter 2, Crossing the Line. Block 3. All eyes turned to me. My father's fork hovered midair. My mother's smile froze like it had been painted on. I could feel the weight of every glance, every breath in the room pressing down on me. Is something wrong, sweetheart? Mom asked, her voice laced with concern but still trying to keep the mood light. Michael opened his mouth, probably to diffuse the moment, but I beat him to it. My voice came out louder than I expected, shaky, sharp. I'm fine, I said, but my hands told the truth, clenched at my sides like fists holding secrets. Olivia sipped her wine and leaned back like she was watching a show. I just think it's time we stop pretending everything's so perfect, I added. The air thickened. Even the candles seemed to burn quieter. Michael looked like he wanted to disappear. Olivia just raised an eyebrow, amused. She still thought I was bluffing. She didn't know what was coming. I didn't raise my voice again. I didn't have to. I just let the silence work for me. The kind of silence that stretches before something breaks. My mother reached for my arm, but I stepped back. "No," I said gently. "Let's be honest tonight, since we're all here, since Olivia wants to be seen." The color drained from her face, but she didn't say a word. She didn't need to. She knew. I was done swallowing her poison, and I was about to serve it right back. Would you like to move forward to Chapter 3? The confrontation begins, or adjust anything in this chapter? Você diz, continue. O ChatGPT diz, excellent. Let's move on to Chapter 3. The confrontation begins. Here's block 1 of 3 paragraphs, 6 lines each. Chapter 3. The confrontation begins. Block 1. You want attention, Olivia? I said, locking eyes with her across the dinner table. You've always wanted to be the center of everything, so let's give you that. My voice was steady, but inside, adrenaline roared like a wildfire. Everyone froze. Forks stopped moving. Glasses hung in midair. Even the clock on the wall felt louder. Olivia smirked, confident, dismissive. She thought this was about jealousy. She had no idea what I'd been holding on to all these years. I turned toward my parents, who sat wide-eyed and stunned. You think she's golden, perfect, adventurous. I gave a tight laugh. You have no idea what she's really like. Olivia's expression cracked, just a hair, but I didn't stop. Do you remember my scholarship? The one I lost in senior year? She deleted the application on purpose, watched me cry for days, and then acted like she was comforting me. My mom gasped softly. My dad stared at Olivia like he didn't recognize her. And that time money went missing from Dad's wallet? You all blamed me, I said, my voice trembling now, but not from fear, from release. You grounded me, yelled at me, made me feel like a criminal. Want to know the truth? She took it, and then let me take the fall. Olivia shifted in her seat, the smugness starting to slip. I felt my throat tighten, but I pressed on. After all the silence, all the pretending, the truth felt electric in my mouth. Would you like to continue with Block 2, or make any changes first? Você disse, continue. O ChatGPT disse, here is Block 2 of 3 for Chapter 3. The confrontation begins. Chapter 3. The confrontation begins, Block 2. I could see it now, how the memories rippled through the room like shockwaves. My mother's hand flew to her chest, my father's jaw clenched, but I wasn't finished. Do you remember the year I lost all my friends? I asked, still staring at Olivia. The lies she told? The things she made up about me, just to feel bigger, more important? I looked at Michael, then back at my parents. She isolated me, on purpose, watched me break, and never once apologized. Olivia tried to laugh, but it came out thin and shaky. This is ridiculous, she said. You're twisting everything. You've always been dramatic. That word, dramatic, hit a nerve so deep it nearly knocked the breath from my lungs. Dramatic? I repeated, almost laughing. You want to talk about dramatic? What about sleeping with my boyfriend in high school? The one who broke up with me crying, while you sat next to me pretending to be my shoulder to cry on. A ripple of gasps filled the table. Michael blinked like someone had slapped him. My mother looked like she might be sick. Olivia's face drained of color, the performative charm slipping right off her like a mask in the rain. You didn't just hurt me, I said. You watched me suffer and made sure it stayed that way, for years, and I let you. I protected your image because I thought maybe, just maybe, you'd grow out of it. I shook my head. But you didn't. You got better at hiding. Would you like to continue with Block 3, or would you like to adjust anything first? Você diz, continue. O ChatGPT diz, here is Block 3 of 3 for Chapter 3. The confrontation begins. Chapter 3. The confrontation begins. Block 3. I looked around the table and saw the truth finally landing in their eyes. My mother stared at Olivia like she was seeing her for the first time. My father, quiet, stern, sat with his arms crossed, lips pressed in a tight line. Michael avoided everyone's gaze, frozen in shame. And Olivia? She didn't smirk this time. She didn't speak. Her mouth opened, then closed. I could tell she was scrambling inside, but the spotlight she once craved had turned scorching. "You've fooled everyone for so long," I said, my tone even, not cruel, just honest. "You always made sure the light hit you just right, always played the victim or the hero, never the villain." My voice softened. "But tonight, Olivia, I'm not going to let you hide behind charm or stories or pretty smiles. Tonight, I'm telling the truth, and I'm done being afraid of what people might think." I breathed in deeply, letting the moment stretch, letting it settle in their bones. There was nowhere left for her to run in that moment. No applause to chase, no spotlight she could manipulate. The room was still, heavy. And even though I had said everything I never thought I'd be brave enough to say, it didn't feel like a conclusion. It felt like something was just starting. A shift. A reckoning. A space where finally, I wasn't the one shrinking to make her shine. Would you like to move on to Chapter 4, The Mask Falls? Or are there any edits you'd like to make first? Você diz, continue. Oh, ChatGPT diz, great. Let's move on to Chapter 4, The Mask Falls. Here is block 1 of 3 paragraphs, 6 lines each. Chapter 4. The Mask Falls, Block 1. Olivia opened her mouth, ready to spin something, anything, that could pull the room back into her orbit. "Kate, you're twisting things. You always—" But her voice cracked mid-sentence, just slightly. Enough for me to see the fear flicker behind her eyes. She glanced toward our parents, desperate for their rescue. But they didn't move. My mother looked heartbroken. My father's silence spoke louder than any words. And Michael? He just stared at his hands like they didn't belong to him. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw accusations. I just stood there, calm and unwavering, the truth sitting with me like an old friend. "You want to cry now?" I asked, tilting my head. "Go ahead, but don't confuse tears with innocence." Olivia blinked fast, mascara clinging to the corners of her lashes. "You spent years making me feel small. You painted yourself in gold and fed me scraps, but you can't fake your way out of this anymore." She tried again. I didn't mean to, but I cut her off gently. "Yes, you did." My tone wasn't angry anymore. It was tired, hollowed out from years of pretending. "You meant every lie, every betrayal. You just didn't think anyone would ever call you out for it." I turned to my parents then, the people who had always praised her adventures, her sparkle. "You saw what you wanted to see, and you let her become this. Would you like to continue with Block 2, or do you want any edits first?" Você diz, continue. Oh, ChatGPT diz, here is Block 2 of 3 for Chapter 4, The Mask Falls. Chapter 4, The Mask Falls, Block 2. My mother blinked slowly, like she was waking up from a long dream. "Kate, why didn't you tell us?" Her voice was soft, not defensive, not angry, just lost. And that question, that simple question, hit me harder than any betrayal Olivia had ever managed. I swallowed the lump rising in my throat. "Because I knew you wouldn't believe me," I said. "Because she was the golden child, the one who sent postcards, the one who always came back with stories." I looked at them both, and for the first time in years, I let them see how hurt I'd been. "You never asked why I kept my distance. You just assumed I was cold or distant or jealous. But the truth is, I was exhausted, always cleaning up her messes, always swallowing my anger, always making room for her to shine." I paused. "But I'm not doing that anymore." My voice didn't shake this time. It landed, firm, final. Michael finally spoke, barely above a whisper. "I should have said something earlier. I should have stopped it." His eyes met mine, filled with regret. I froze. I didn't know what to do. I nodded. You didn't have to know what to do. You just had to know what was right. He looked down again, the shame folding his shoulders inward. And Olivia? She was silent now. All her charm, her power, her clever little performances, gone. What was left was something raw, unguarded, and empty. Would you like me to continue with Block 3? Or would you like to make any changes first? Você disse, continue. O ChatGPT disse, here is Block 3 of 3 for Chapter 4, The Mask Falls. Chapter 4, The Mask Falls, Block 3. No one moved. The candles flickered against faces now pale and stunned, the once warm dining room carrying the chill of everything unsaid, finally spoken. Olivia stood abruptly, her chair scraping harshly against the floor. Her eyes were wet, her jaw clenched, but she didn't beg. She didn't explain. She didn't offer a single excuse. She just grabbed her bag with shaking hands and stormed out the front door. The silence she left behind was deafening. I stayed rooted in place, watching the doorway where she vanished. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just stood there, steady. After years of making myself smaller so she could feel big, I had finally reclaimed my voice. And I wasn't about to give it up now. My parents remained quiet, each processing in their own way. My mother's lip trembled. My father stared at his empty plate like it might hold answers. And Michael, well, he still hadn't looked up again. But this wasn't about him anymore. Or them. This was about me, and the years I'd lost trying to be the peacekeeper, the forgiver, the one who understood. I wasn't that woman now. And as I walked into the hallway, past the framed photos, past the smiles we once forced, I realized something. Olivia's departure wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of something else. Something quieter. Something true. Ready to move on to Chapter 5. The silence that follows, or would you like to make any changes first? Você disse, continue. O ChatGPT disse, here is Chapter 5. The silence that follows, Block 1 of 3. 3 paragraphs, 6 lines each. Chapter 5. The silence that follows. Block 1. The house felt different the next morning. Still, fragile almost, like if you spoke too loudly, it might all collapse. My parents moved slowly through the kitchen, voices hushed, their energy dimmed. My mother didn't mention Olivia. My father didn't ask questions. But there was something softer in the way they looked at me, like they finally saw the cracks that had been there all along. Over breakfast, Mom reached across the table and took my hand. I'm sorry, she said, no theatrics. Just those 2 words, heavy and honest. I nodded, unsure if I was ready to forgive, but ready to be heard. We didn't see it, my father added, not because it wasn't there, but because we didn't want to. For the first time, they weren't defending her. They weren't excusing it. They were listening. And that, somehow, was enough for now. Olivia didn't call. She didn't send a message. She vanished the same way she always did. On her terms, without explanation, leaving others to clean up the emotional mess. But this time, I didn't chase her. I didn't wonder what I'd done wrong. I didn't rehearse fake apologies in my head. I simply let her go. Let the silence stretch between us without trying to fill it. Because silence, I'd learned, can be a kind of peace, too. Would you like to continue with Block 2, or would you like any changes first? Você disse, continue. O ChatGPT disse, here is Block 2 of 3 for Chapter 5, The Silence That Follows. Chapter 5, The Silence That Follows. Block 2. Michael and I didn't talk much that week, not at first. He moved around me gently, like I might break if he stepped too hard. There were quiet dinners, long walks where we said nothing, and nights where I stared at the ceiling wondering what trust should feel like. One evening, he finally spoke. You don't have to forgive me, he said, his voice low, but I want to earn back whatever's left. I looked at him for a long time, trying to decide if that was still possible. I don't need perfect, I told him. I just need truth. And next time, I need you to stand with me. He nodded, and though I couldn't promise anything yet, The words didn't sting. They landed with clarity. Not everything was broken. Not everything had to be rebuilt overnight. Some things just needed time. And time, I finally realized, was something I was allowed to give myself. So I gave myself space to feel everything, the grief, the anger, the quiet relief. I stopped blaming myself for Olivia's choices. I stopped second-guessing the voice inside me that had begged to be heard for years. And slowly, I started to breathe differently, not cautiously, not waiting for the next betrayal, just freely. It was a strange kind of freedom, and it felt earned. Would you like me to continue with the final block 3, or do you want to adjust anything first? Você disse, continue. O ChatGPT disse, here is block 3 of 3, the final block of Chapter 5, the silence that follows. Chapter 5, the silence that follows. Block 3. A few weeks later, I found myself back in my childhood room. The shelves were still cluttered with old trophies, books with dog-eared pages, and a music box Olivia gave me when we were kids. I sat on the edge of the bed, the quiet so thick it felt sacred. My fingers grazed the edge of a dusty photo album. I opened it, slowly. And there we were, 2 little girls, grinning in swimsuits, arms slung over each other like nothing could touch us. I stared at that photo for a long time. Part of me wanted to cry. Another part just felt calm. Not numb, but steady. I slid the photo out of the sleeve, held it for a second longer, then placed it gently in a drawer. Not to forget, but to stop letting it haunt me. That chapter didn't need a spotlight anymore. It needed rest. Olivia always wanted to be unforgettable, always needed to be seen. And now she was, just not the way she expected. I stood, walked to the window, and opened it wide. The air was warm and honest, carrying no weight from the night it had once held. I looked out at the street I'd once biked down 100 times, the tree we used to climb, the porch where secrets were whispered. Everything had changed, and so had I. As I turned off the light, one final thought settled in quietly. She always wanted to be unforgettable. Now she is, for all the right reasons.